In the ancient lands of the north, where the fjords run deep and the mountains touch the sky, there once lived a Viking named Ragnar the Peaceful. Unlike the warriors of legend, Ragnar had spent his life not in conquest, but in quiet service to his village as a boat builder, a storyteller, and a keeper of ancient wisdom. For 70 winters, Ragnar had crafted vessels with his weathered hands. Not warships built for raids across treacherous seas, but peaceful boats that carried families to new lands, fishing vessels that provided sustenance, and ceremonial ships that honored the gods with beauty rather than bloodshed. His workshop by the harbor was filled with the gentle sounds of creation, the soft scraping of his plane against oak wood, the rhythmic tapping of his hammer as he fitted each plank with loving care, the whispered prayers he offered to each tree that gave its life for his craft. The villagers would often find him there in the early morning mist, working by the light of a single candle, humming old songs his grandmother had taught him. Songs of the deep forests, of the dancing lights in the winter sky, of the peaceful spirits that dwelt in the calm waters between the islands. Now, as the golden years of his life drew to a close, Ragnar felt a gentle calling from across the water. It came to him in dreams at first, soft voices speaking in the ancient tongue, telling him of a journey that awaited. Not the violent passage to Valhalla that warriors sought, but a peaceful voyage reserved for those who had chosen creation over destruction. The All-Father Odin was summoning him home, not through the glory of battle, but through the most serene journey any soul could take. For Ragnar had earned something rarer than a warrior's death. He had earned a peaceful passage to the eternal realm. At the harbor, his finest creation waited in the calm water. A long ship unlike any ever built, crafted not for war, but for dreams. Its hull was carved from the heartwood of an ancient pine that had stood for 1,000 years, watching over the village with quiet strength. The dragon head at the prow was unlike the fierce serpents that adorned war vessels. This dragon's eyes were closed in peaceful slumber, its mouth curved in the gentlest of smiles. Ragnar had carved it in the image of the great dragon that, according to legend, carried sleeping souls across the boundary between worlds. The ship's sides were adorned not with shields and weapons, but with intricate carvings that told the story of Ragnar's life. Here, a scene of him teaching young Eric to plane wood. There, an image of his wedding day, when he and beloved Astrid exchanged vows beneath the dancing northern lights. The mast was carved from silver birch, blessed by the village shaman, and wrapped with runes that spelled out wishes for peaceful journeys and safe harbor. The sails, when unfurled, would catch not just the wind, but the very breath of the gods themselves, carrying their passenger toward eternal rest. As word spread through the village that Ragnar's time had come, the people gathered not with sorrow, but with understanding. They had all seen the signs. It's the way he had begun giving away his tools to the younger craftsmen. The peaceful smile that never left his face. The way he would stand at his window each evening, gazing across the water toward the setting sun. His grandson Eric was the first to arrive at the harbor. Though only 16 winters old, the boy had inherited his grandfather's gift for working with wood, and more importantly, his gentle spirit. In his arms, he carried a small wooden box, intricately carved with symbols of protection and love. "Grandfather," Eric said softly, his voice carrying across the still evening air, "I've brought you something for your journey." Inside the box was a miniature replica of Ragnar's workshop, complete with tiny tools and half-finished boats. Eric had spent months crafting it in secret, knowing that this day would come. Ragnar's weathered hands trembled slightly as he accepted the gift. In the gathering dusk, his eyes sparkled with unshed tears of joy. "My dear boy," he whispered, "you have captured not just the wooden tools, but the very heart of what we do. Creation, love, the passing of wisdom from one generation to the next." As the evening star appeared above the mountains, more villagers began to arrive. They came carrying not weapons or treasure, but simple gifts of love. Ragnar's daughter brought a blanket woven by her late mother, Astrid. The wool was soft as cloud down and dyed the deep blue of the winter twilight sky. The village baker brought fresh bread, still warm from the oven, wrapped in linen blessed by the temple priestess. The herbalist arrived with a small pouch of dried flowers. Lavender for peace, chamomile for peaceful sleep, and northern mint that would bring calm to any troubled waters. Ragnar's lifelong friend and fellow craftsman carried a drinking horn carved from ancient oak. The two men had shared countless stories over this very horn, sitting by their workshop fires during the long winter nights, speaking of their dreams, their hopes, their shared love of creating beautiful things. My friend Magnus said, his voice thick with emotion, "This horn has heard 1,000 tales. May it serve you well in the halls of eternity, where the stories never end, and the mead flows sweeter than honey." The village children came forward shyly, led by little Astrid, named for Ragnar's beloved wife. In her small hands she carried a collection of smooth stones from the shore, each one painted with simple symbols of love and blessing. "These are from all of us, Uncle Ragnar," she said in her sweet, piping voice. "Well, you'll always remember your home, no matter how far you sail." As Ragnar accepted each gift, he felt his heart grow both heavier and lighter. Heavy with the love of these people who had been his life, his family, his purpose. Light with the knowledge that this love would travel with him, making his vessel not just a ship, but a floating temple of memory and devotion. The village elder approached, carrying a staff topped with sacred runes. But these were not runes of war or conquest. They were symbols of peace, of safe passage, of the eternal rest that awaited good souls in the realm beyond. Ragnar, son of peace, builder of dreams, the elder intoned in the ancient ritual words, "The spirits of water and wind have prepared your path. The ancestors wait to welcome you with joy. Your legacy lives in every boat you built, every young craftsman you taught, every act of kindness you performed." As the full moon rose above the fjord, casting a silver path across the dark water, Ragnar stepped carefully into his vessel. The ship settled slightly under his weight, but not with the heaviness of burden. Instead, it seemed to embrace him, welcoming him like an old friend. The dragon head lifted slightly, as if awakening from a long sleep. For just a moment, it seemed to Ragnar that the carved eyes opened, peering across the moonlit water toward something only it could see. Eric stepped forward to untie the mooring ropes, but Ragnar raised a gentle hand. "Wait, my boy," he said softly. "There is something I must tell you all before I go." The gathered villagers fell silent. The only sounds the gentle lapping of water against the harbor stones and the soft whisper of wind through the pine trees. "I have lived among you for 70 winters," Ragnar began, his voice carrying clearly in the still air. "I have seen children born, watched them grow, marry, have children of their own. I have seen the seasons turn, the northern lights dance, the ice come and go on the fjord." He paused, his weathered hand resting on the dragon's head. "And in all that time, I have learned that the greatest treasure is not gold or glory, but the simple joy of creating something beautiful, of sharing knowledge, of loving deeply and being loved in return." The villagers nodded, many wiping tears from their eyes. "So as I begin this final journey, know that I carry with me not just your gifts, but the memory of every shared smile, every lesson taught and learned, every moment of peace we have created together." Eric stepped forward and gently loosened the ropes that held the ship to the dock. As he did, a soft breeze arose from nowhere, filling the silver sails and beginning to push the vessel slowly away from shore. "The wind is right, grandfather," Eric whispered. "The spirits of the water are calling you home. May your journey be as peaceful as your life has been." The long ship began to drift slowly across the moonlit harbor, guided not by oars or earthly wind, but by something far deeper. The ancient current that carries all souls toward their eternal rest. The invisible river that flows between the world of the living and the realm of dreams. As the distance between ship and shore gradually increased, Ragnar raised his hand in a final farewell. The villagers watched in silent reverence as their beloved craftsman sailed into the silver night, his vessel growing smaller and smaller until it seemed to merge with the moonbeams themselves. And then, just as the ship was about to disappear from sight, something magical happened. The northern lights began to dance across the sky, painting the heavens in shades of green and gold and silver. The aurora seemed to reach down to embrace the little ship, welcoming Ragnar into its cosmic dance. The villagers stood watching long into the night until the lights faded and the harbor grew still once more. But they knew that somewhere beyond the horizon, Ragnar's journey was just beginning, and that peaceful currents were carrying him toward a reunion with all the love he had known and lost. "Sleep now, and dream of gentle farewells," of love that transcends death, and of the peaceful harbor that awaits all souls at the end of their earthly voyage. As Ragnar's ship passed beyond the familiar waters of his village harbor, the world around him began to transform in ways both subtle and profound. The silver moonlight that had guided him from shore seemed to deepen, taking on an otherworldly quality that made the water beneath his vessel shimmer like liquid starlight. The longship moved forward with purpose, though no earthly wind filled its sails. Instead, it was carried by the ancient current that flows between worlds, the invisible river that has guided souls on their final journeys since the beginning of time itself. As he entered the great fjord, Ragnar felt a deep sense of coming home, though he had never sailed these particular waters before. The towering mountains on either side seemed to welcome him, their snow-capped peaks glowing softly in the ethereal light that now surrounded his vessel. The water beneath his ship began to change, transforming from the dark blue of earthly seas to something far more wondrous. Now it flowed like liquid silver, its surface so perfectly calm that it reflected not just the mountains and stars above, but something far more precious: memories. In the mirror-smooth surface, Ragnar saw his wedding day unfold once again. There was his beloved Astrid, young and radiant, her golden hair crowned with wildflowers as they exchanged vows beneath the dancing northern lights. He could almost hear the ancient words they had spoken, promises of love that would endure beyond death itself. The memory faded, replaced by another. His children's births, their first tentative steps. Their laughter echoing off these very mountain walls as they played by the fjord's edge during long summer evenings. Each reflection was perfect in its clarity, more real somehow than the original moments had been. Ragnar lay back against the soft blanket Astrid had woven, letting these visions of his life flow past like scenes from the most beautiful dream. He realized now that this was not just a journey to the afterlife, but a gentle review of all the love he had known, all the joy he had experienced, all the beauty he had helped create. As his ship moved deeper into the fjord, the mist began to rise from the water around him. But this was not the cold, forbidding fog of earthly seas. Instead, it was warm and welcoming, like the gentle breath of sleeping giants, like the softest caress of a mother's hand. In the mist, he began to hear voices. Not the harsh cries of battle or the wails of the damned, but the gentle whispers of all who had gone before him. His parents called to him softly across the years, their voices young and strong as they had been in his childhood memories. "Ragnar, our son," came his mother's voice, sweet as honey mead. "We have been waiting for you in the great hall ahead. Your place is prepared, your welcome assured." His father's deep laugh rumbled through the mist like distant thunder made gentle. "My boy, you have exceeded our greatest hopes. You chose creation over destruction, love over conquest. You have earned the rarest of all honors, a peaceful passage to eternal rest." Old friends joined the chorus of welcoming voices. There was Bjorn the Wise, who had taught him the secrets of reading wood grain and understanding the spirit that lived within each tree. There was Helga the Healer, who had shown him which herbs brought peace and which songs calmed troubled hearts. "Come, young craftsman," called Bjorn's familiar voice. "There are workshops waiting in the eternal realm, and woods more beautiful than any you have ever seen. Trees that give their wood gladly, ships that build themselves from love alone." As the fjord began to narrow, the mountains grew taller still, their peaks disappearing into clouds that glowed with inner light. It was as if the very stones themselves were alive with some divine radiance, ancient guardians, that had watched over countless souls making this sacred journey. Ravens began to appear, flying alongside his ship in perfect formation. But these were not Odin's fierce messengers of war, those dark harbingers that circled battlefields in search of the slain. These ravens were different. Their feathers seemed to catch and hold the ethereal light, and their cries were soft as lullabies. One of the ravens, larger and more majestic than the others, alighted on the dragon's head at the prow of Ragnar's ship. While as it did, the carved dragon seemed to stir slightly, as if the presence of this living creature had awakened some spark of life within the ancient wood. "Greetings, Ragnar the Peaceful," the raven spoke, though its voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "I am Thought, one of the Allfather's companions. But tonight I come not as a messenger of war, but as a guide for souls who have chosen the path of wisdom. The raven's dark eyes were filled with ancient knowledge and surprisingly gentle kindness. Your journey has only begun, good craftsman. Ahead lies the threshold between worlds where mortal maps end and eternity begins. Ragnar reached out slowly, and the great raven allowed him to stroke its midnight feathers. They were warm to the touch and seemed to pulse with the same gentle rhythm as his own heartbeat. "I am honored by your guidance, noble thought," Ragnar replied. "But tell me, what lies ahead? What should I expect when I reach the realm beyond?" The raven tilted its head, considering the question with the gravity it deserved. "You will find, good Ragnar, that the afterlife is not one place, but many. Each soul finds the rest that matches the life they lived. Warriors who lived for battle find their eternal conflict in Valhalla's great hall. But you..." The raven paused, its eyes twinkling with something that might have been amusement. "You, master craftsman, will find something far more precious. The Hall of Peace, where souls who built rather than destroyed, who created rather than conquered, find their eternal rest. There, you will rejoin not just your beloved Astrid, but all those whose lives were made better by your gentle hands and kind heart." As they spoke, Ragnar became aware that his ship was no longer entirely subject to the normal laws of the physical world. It seemed to be sailing not just across the surface of the fjord, but through layers of reality itself. Moving between the world he had known and realms beyond mortal imagination, the dragon's head at the prow began to sing, its wooden throat somehow producing the most beautiful melody Ragnar had ever heard. It was a lullaby older than the mountains themselves, a song that spoke of all the peaceful souls who had made this journey before him, of the eternal rest that awaited beyond the mist of the great reunion. That would make all earthly partings seem like nothing more than brief intermissions. Time itself seemed to slow and bend around the ship. The boundaries between dream and waking, between memory and hope, began to blur like watercolors touched by gentle rain. Ragnar found himself drifting in and out of a peaceful trance, lulled by the dragon's ancient song and the soft whispers of the spirits in the mist. In his dreaming state, he saw visions of the life he was leaving behind. The village workshop where he had spent so many happy hours, now tended by young Eric with the same love and care Ragnar had shown. The boats he had built, still carrying their passengers safely across the waters, still fulfilling their purpose long after their creator had sailed away. He saw the couples whose wedding vessels he had crafted, still happy after many years, their children playing on beaches where his fishing boats brought daily sustenance. He saw the ceremonial ships he had built for religious festivals, still carrying offerings to the gods with grace and beauty. "You see," whispered the raven thought, "nothing truly beautiful ever dies. Your creations live on, bringing joy and safety to countless souls. Your legacy is not in monuments of stone or gold, but in the lives touched by your gentle craft." The fjord continued to carry him deeper into the realm between worlds. The water had become something beyond mere H2O. It was the very essence of peaceful passage, the liquid embodiment of transition from one state of being to another. Schools of silverfish began to swim alongside the ship, their scales catching the ethereal light and throwing it back in patterns that seemed almost like written messages. They were welcoming him, these creatures of the deep, acknowledging his passage with their graceful dance. Above, the clouds that crowned the mountain peaks began to part, revealing glimpses of something that made Ragnar's heart leap with recognition and joy. Golden light, warm and welcoming, was beginning to shine through the gaps, and with it came the sound of distant music, harps and flutes playing melodies of such beauty that earthly words could never describe them. "We approach the threshold," announced the raven. "Prepare yourself, good Ragnar, for wonders beyond imagination. But remember, you have earned this passage through a lifetime of kindness. Walk forward without fear, for you are expected and welcomed." As the great fjord began to widen once more, opening into what seemed like an infinite sea of silver light, Ragnar felt a profound sense of completion settling over him like a warm cloak. His earthly journey was ending, but something far more magnificent was about to begin. The dragon's head lifted high, its carved eyes now definitely alive with gentle fire, scanning the luminous horizon for the first glimpse of their destination. And there, just visible through the mist and light, the outline of something wonderful began to emerge. The gates of the eternal realm were coming into view, and they were more beautiful than any earthly craftsman could ever imagine or create. Sleep now, and dream of mystical waters that carry away all sorrows, of gentle guides who light the path to peace, and of the threshold that awaits between this world and the next. Beyond the mystical fjord, where mortal maps ended and eternity began, Ragnar saw a light unlike any he had ever known in his 70 winters of earthly life. This was not the harsh glare of battle fire that lit the faces of warriors in their final moments, or the cold gleam of northern stars on winter nights. Instead, it was the warm, golden glow of coming home after the longest journey imaginable. The light seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere at once, transforming the silver mist around his ship into something that sparkled like crushed pearls. As his vessel drew closer to this radiance, Ragnar could see that it flowed from a source both magnificent and welcoming, the great gates of the eternal realm. But these were not the fortress walls he had imagined from the old war songs. The gates did not rise like barriers meant to keep souls out, but rather like welcoming arches designed to embrace all who approached with pure hearts. They were carved from what appeared to be crystallized starlight, their surfaces shifting and flowing with colors that had no names in any earthly language. The great dragon's head at the prow of his ship lifted higher, its carved eyes now fully alive with gentle fire. It spoke in a voice like wind through pine forests, ancient and wise and infinitely patient. "Behold, Ragnar the Peaceful," it said, "the threshold between worlds. Here the violent and the gentle part ways. Warriors who live for conquest pass through the gates of glory to their eternal battles. But you, builder of peace, shall enter through the gates of rest." As they approached, Ragnar could see that there were indeed two sets of gates. To the north stood the massive portals he recognized from the old stories, towering structures of gold and iron, crowned with weapons and shields, through which warriors marched in endless procession toward halls where mead flowed like rivers and the sounds of combat never ceased. But his ship was being guided toward a different entrance entirely. These gates were carved from materials that seemed to shift between silver, wood, and golden stone, their surfaces adorned not with weapons of war but with symbols of creation, tools for building, implements of healing, instruments for making music, and books containing the wisdom of ages. At the threshold stood figures that made Ragnar's heart nearly burst with joy and recognition. There was his beloved Astrid, but not as she had been in her final years, worn by time and illness. She appeared as she had on their wedding day, young, radiant, her golden hair crowned with wildflowers, her blue eyes sparkling with the same love that had sustained him through decades of earthly life. Beside her stood his parents, Eric and Gudrun, appearing as they had in his childhood memories, when they had seemed like giants of strength and wisdom. His father's weathered hands, which had first taught him to shape wood, were extended in welcome. His mother's gentle smile, which had comforted him through countless childhood fears, glowed with maternal pride. But these were not the only souls waiting to welcome him. The space around the gates was filled with faces he recognized, not just family and friends, but all the lives he had touched through his gentle craft and kind heart. There were the young couples whose wedding boats he had built, still glowing with the happiness his vessels had carried them to. There were the fishermen who had fed their families using the boats he crafted, their faces bright with gratitude. There were the children he had taught to work with wood, now grown and peaceful, their own creative spirits burning like gentle candles in the ethereal light. Among them stood figures he had never met in life, but somehow knew. All the souls who had been saved by his boats during storms. All the families who had found new homes, thanks to the vessels he built for their journeys. All the priests who had carried offerings to the gods in the ceremonial ships he had crafted with such reverence and care. As his ship drew to the very threshold of the gates, a voice spoke that seemed to contain all the authority of the cosmos, yet was gentle as a father speaking to a beloved child. "Welcome home, Ragnar the Peaceful." Before him stood a figure of immense dignity and power, but not the fierce all-father of war that warriors expected to meet. This was Odin as the keeper of wisdom, the guardian of all souls, who had chosen love over conquest, peace over glory. His single eye twinkled with warmth in his raven's memory and thought, perched on his shoulders like gentle companions rather than harbingers of doom. "Your ship was not built for raids or battles," Odin continued, his voice like distant thunder made gentle, like the ocean made calm. "It was built for this, the most important voyage any soul can make, the journey home to eternal rest, eternal peace, eternal love. The All-Father stepped forward, and Ragnar saw that his hands, like his father's, were extended in welcome rather than raised in judgment. You chose a harder path in the warrior's way, Odin said. It is easier to destroy than to create, simpler to tear down than to build up. But you spent your life making things of beauty, teaching skills that would outlive you, showing kindness to all who crossed your path. As Odin spoke, the gates themselves seemed to sing in harmonies that made the music of earthly harps sound like children as toys. The melody spoke of welcome, of rest earned through service, of love that transcended death itself. In my great halls, Odin continued, there are many mansions. The warriors have their places of eternal combat, where they feast and fight until the end of days. But there is another hall, rarer and more precious. The Hall of Peace, where souls like yours find the rest they have truly earned. Ragnar felt his ship gently touch what seemed like shores made of clouds and starlight. As he stood to step from his vessel, he found that his aged body felt young and strong again. The aches that had plagued his final years were gone, replaced by a vitality that seemed to flow from the very air of this sacred place. Before he could step fully onto the shore, Astrid rushed forward, her face radiant with joy. When she embraced him, Ragnar felt as though he was holding not just his beloved wife, but the very essence of all the love he had ever known or given. My darling husband, she whispered, her voice like music made flesh. I have been waiting for you, but the wait was nothing compared to the joy of this moment. You have come home at last. Around them, all the welcoming souls began to sing. Not the harsh battle songs of warriors, but gentle lullabies, work songs from happy workshops, celebration songs from weddings and festivals. The music rose and fell like gentle waves, washing over Ragnar and filling him with a peace deeper than sleep, more complete than any earthly rest. His parents approached, and for the first time since childhood, Ragnar felt small and safe in their embrace. All the years of separation, all the grief of their passing, melted away like morning mist before the sun. Our son, his mother said, her voice carrying all the pride and love a parent could feel. You have brought honor not through conquest, but through creation, not through taking life, but through nurturing it. We could not be more proud. His father clapped him on the shoulder with the same firm gentleness Ragnar remembered from his youth. Come, my boy. Let me show you the workshops of eternity. Here the wood sings as you shape it, and every tool is perfectly balanced in your hand. Here you can build ships that sail on rivers of starlight, homes that shelter souls for all eternity. As more and more of his loved ones gathered around him, Ragnar began to understand the magnitude of what awaited. This was not just a reunion with those he had lost, but a homecoming to a place where all his deepest desires, to create, to teach, to love, to be loved, could be fulfilled beyond any earthly limitation. Young Eric, his grandson, materialized among the crowd, but here he appeared not as a child, but as the master craftsman he would one day become. His eyes shone with the same love of creating beautiful things that had driven Ragnar throughout his life. Grandfather, Eric said, his voice filled with wonder, I understand now why you had to leave. The work we began together in the earthly realm continues here, but in ways more wonderful than we ever imagined. Behind the gathered souls, Ragnar could see glimpses of the Hall of Peace itself. It was not a single building, but seemed to be an entire realm of rest and creativity. With workshops where master craftsmen shared their knowledge freely, gardens where every plant bloomed in perfect beauty, and libraries where all the world's wisdom was preserved and celebrated. The dragonhead of his ship, which had carried him faithfully on this ultimate journey, began to glow with increasing brightness. As Ragnar watched in wonder, his faithful vessel slowly transformed, its wood becoming living light, its carved dragon awakening fully and spreading great wings of pure energy. Your ship has served its purpose, Odin explained gently, carried you safely across the threshold between worlds. Now it becomes part of the eternal light that guides other peaceful souls on their own journeys home. The dragon, now fully alive and magnificent beyond description, spoke one final time in its voice like wind through ancient forests. Farewell, Ragnar the Peaceful. I have been honored to carry you on this sacred journey. Now I return to help guide others who have earned their rest through lives of love and service. With that, the great dragon spread its wings and soared into the golden light above the gates, where it took its place among the constellation of guides who helped souls find their way to their appropriate eternal homes. Ragnar watched it go with tears of gratitude streaming down his face. Then he turned back to his welcoming family and friends, to Odin's gentle smile, to the gates of the Hall of Peace standing open before him. "Come," Astrid said, taking his hand with the same tender love she had shown him on their wedding day. "Your place is prepared, your welcome assured. The Feast of Peace awaits, and there are so many stories to share, so much love to celebrate." As they walked together toward the gates, the assembled souls began to sing again, their voices rising in a harmony so beautiful that it seemed to make the very air shimmer with joy. The song spoke of journeys completed, of love that conquered death, of peace that passed all earthly understanding. The gates swung open with a sound like gentle bells, revealing glimpses of wonders beyond imagination. And Ragnar, the peaceful builder of boats and keeper of wisdom, crossed the threshold into his eternal reward, surrounded by all the love he had given and received in his long and gentle life. Sleep now, and dream of golden gates that open to welcome kind souls home, of reunions with loved ones that last forever, and of peace that surpasses all understanding. As Ragnar crossed the threshold of the Hall of Peace, guided by his beloved Astrid's gentle hand, he found himself in a realm that exceeded his wildest dreams of what the afterlife might hold. This was not the raucous, feasting hall of warriors' legends, where the clash of weapons echoed endlessly and mead flowed like rivers. Instead, it was something far more precious and rare, a sanctuary of perfect tranquility, designed for souls who had earned their rest through lives of service, love, and creation. The hall itself seemed to extend infinitely in all directions, yet somehow felt intimate and welcoming. Its walls were not made of stone or wood, but of something that shifted between golden light and crystallized music. Surfaces that sang softly when touched by the gentle breeze that flowed through this sacred space. There were no hard benches for feasting warriors here. Instead, the hall was filled with the most comfortable resting places imaginable. Soft divans covered in fabric woven from moonbeams. Chairs that seemed to embrace whoever sat in them, and sleeping areas surrounded by curtains that shimmered like captured aurora borealis. Each resting place was perfectly suited to the soul who claimed it, shaped by their earthly preferences and dreams. Ragnar found himself being led to a section that looked remarkably like his beloved workshop, but transformed into something infinitely more beautiful and peaceful. His place of honor overlooked a great window that showed not the static beauty of a painted scene, but something far more wonderful. Through this magical portal, he could see all the peaceful moments still happening throughout the mortal world. Moments of creation, love, birth, learning, and joy. He watched children taking their first steps, while their parents wept happy tears. He saw young couples exchanging wedding vows under star-filled skies. He observed master craftsmen teaching eager apprentices, passing down skills and wisdom that would outlive their earthly bodies. He witnessed acts of kindness between strangers, moments of forgiveness, scenes of families reuniting after long separations. "This is your reward," Astrid explained softly, settling beside him as naturally as if they were sitting by their earthly hearth once again. "You spent your life creating moments of joy and safety for others. Now you can watch as those ripples continue to spread throughout the world, touching lives in ways you never imagined." Around them, other peaceful souls had found their own perfect places of rest. There was Bjorn the Wise, surrounded by apprentices from across the centuries who had come to learn from his eternal wisdom about working with wood and understanding the spirits that dwelt within trees. His workshop area was filled with the gentle sounds of creation, the soft whisper of planes against wood, the rhythmic tapping of careful hammers, the satisfied sighs of craftsmen seeing their visions take shape. Nearby, Helga the healer tended a garden that bloomed with every healing plant that had ever grown, their fragrances mixing to create an atmosphere of perfect wellness and peace. Souls who had been physicians, herbalists, and caregivers in their earthly lives gathered around her, sharing knowledge and stories of lives they had saved and suffering they had eased. In another section, teachers from throughout history sat in circles with eager students, sharing knowledge that in this realm was unlimited and perfect. Musicians played instruments that created melodies of such beauty that they seemed to paint colors in the air. Artists worked with pigments made of captured sunlight and brushes crafted from angel feathers. "You see," Astrid continued, her hand warm and real in his, "the Hall of Peace is not one place, but many. Each soul finds exactly what they need for their perfect rest. Some find it in continued creation, others in eternal learning, still others in simply being surrounded by the love they gave and received. Ragnar looked around in wonder at this perfect community of gentle souls. He recognized the faces of many he had known in life, but there were countless others. People from different times, different lands, all united by the common thread of having chosen love over hatred, creation over destruction, service over selfishness. An elderly woman approached their resting area, her face glowing with the same inner peace that seemed to illuminate all the inhabitants of this sacred realm. In her arms, she carried what appeared to be a small child, but as she drew closer, Ragnar realized it was something far more precious. "Ragnar the Peaceful," she said, in a voice like gentle wind chimes, "I am Ire, the goddess of healing and mercy. I have brought you a gift from the All-Father himself." She placed the small figure in Ragnar's arms, and he gasped with recognition and joy. It was a baby, not just any baby, but the spiritual essence of every child whose life had been saved by the boats he had built, every infant who had been safely carried to new lands in his vessels, every young life that had been preserved because of his craft. The baby looked up at him with eyes that held the wisdom of ages and the innocence of new life combined. When it smiled, Ragnar felt his heart fill with such complete joy that he understood why some souls needed no other heaven than this single moment of perfect love. Every boat you built, Are explained gently, every safe journey your vessels provided, every life preserved through your craft, all of it is gathered here in this small soul. This is the true measure of a life well lived, not the enemies defeated, but the lives preserved and protected. As Ragnar cradled this embodiment of his life's work, he felt the last remnants of any earthly sorrow or regret dissolve completely. He had worried sometimes, in his final years, whether his quiet life had mattered, whether choosing peace over glory had been the right path. Now he knew beyond any doubt that every gentle choice, every act of creation, every moment of kindness had been building toward this perfect culmination. Round the hall, he could see other souls receiving similar revelations of their true legacy. A baker was shown how her bread had nourished not just bodies but spirits, providing comfort to the grieving and strength to the weary. A teacher was reunited with the accumulated wisdom of all his students, seeing how his lessons had spread through generations like ripples in an endless pond. "This is why the Hall of Peace is rarer and more precious than Valhalla," came a familiar voice. Odin himself approached, but here he appeared not as the fierce warfather, but as the gentle keeper of wisdom and memory. Any fool can destroy, can take life, can spread fear and chaos. But to create, to preserve, to heal, to teach, these require true strength, true courage, true nobility of spirit. The All-Father settled nearby, his presence bringing not awe or fear, but the comfortable feeling of being in the company of the wisest grandfather imaginable. "In the earthly realm," Odin continued, "warriors' deeds are sung in great halls, their names remembered in epic poems. But here we sing different songs, lullabies of lives saved, gentle melodies of kindness shown, quiet harmonies of love that conquered hatred." As if summoned by his words, music began to rise from throughout the hall. Not the clash of weapons or the roar of battle songs, but the most beautiful lullabies ever created. Mothers throughout history sang to their children, craftsmen hummed work songs that made their creations more beautiful. Lovers whispered melodies of devotion that had lasted beyond death. Ragnar found himself humming along, remembering the songs his grandmother had taught him, the melodies he had sung while working in his shop, the lullabies he had crooned to his own children and grandchildren. Here all these songs blended into one perfect symphony of peace. "Rest now, my beloved," Astrid whispered, her voice joining the ethereal chorus. "Your work is done. Your ship brought you safely home. Your story will inspire others to choose the path of peace, just as you did." As the music swelled around them, Ragnar felt himself settling into the most perfect rest imaginable. It was not sleep as mortals knew it, but something infinitely more refreshing. A state of complete peace where all worries dissolved, all pain was forgotten, all fear was replaced by perfect love. In this state of divine rest, he began to dream, but these were not the confused visions of mortal sleep. These dreams were more real than waking life had ever been. Found himself sailing again. But now, his ship was made of starlight, and his passengers were all the souls he would help guide to their own perfect rest. In his eternal dreams, he sailed forever on seas of liquid peace, under skies painted with aurora of every color imaginable. Sometimes Astrid sailed with him, sometimes his children and grandchildren, sometimes dear friends from his earthly life. Sometimes he sailed alone, but never lonely, for he could feel the love of all creation flowing around him like warm wind. He saw himself building new boats in these dreams, vessels that could carry souls safely across any trouble, ships that brought healing wherever they sailed, magical craft that spread peace and love like seeds on fertile ground. Each boat he built in his eternal rest became real in the mortal world, manifesting as moments of unexpected kindness, acts of surprising courage, instances of perfect love appearing just when they were needed most. The baby that Ira had given him, the embodiment of all the lives his work had saved, grew in his dreams into a beautiful child, then a wise adult, then became a spirit of protection that watched over all who chose creation over destruction, love over hatred, peace over conflict. You see, the dream child said in a voice like wind through fields of grain, "Your story doesn't end here. Every soul who hears the tale of Ragnar the Peaceful, who chooses gentleness over violence, who builds rather than destroys, they become part of your continuing journey. Your voyage of peace expands with each kind act, each creative moment, each choice of love over fear." And so Ragnar the Peaceful entered his eternal rest, but it was a rest filled with continued purpose and endless love. In the Hall of Peace, surrounded by all who had chosen the path of gentleness, he found not an ending, but a beginning, the start of an infinite journey of love, creation, and service that would ripple through all eternity. The northern lights danced above the Hall of Peace that night, painting the eternal sky in colors that had no earthly names. They danced not in celebration of conquest or victory in battle, but in pure joy for another gentle soul who had found his way home, another peaceful spirit who had discovered that the greatest strength lay not in the sword, but in the loving heart. And somewhere in the mortal world on clear Nordic nights, when the aurora painted the sky in green and gold, those who listened carefully could still hear the gentle creak of Ragnar's ship sailing through the realm of dreams, still ready to guide other peaceful souls across the silver waters to their own eternal rest. Sleep now, dear listener, and let the story of Ragnar the Peaceful carry you into your own gentle dreams. Let his example remind you that every act of kindness matters. Every moment of creation has value. Every choice of peace over conflict adds beauty to the world. Dream of comfortable resting places where all sorrows are healed, where all love is remembered, where all gentle souls find their perfect peace. Dream of halls where creation is celebrated above destruction, where wisdom is more valued than strength, where the greatest heroes are those who build rather than tear down. May your own journey, whether in waking or sleeping, be guided by the same gentle spirit that carried Ragnar home. May you choose creation over destruction, love over fear, peace over conflict. And may you rest always in the knowledge that such choices, however quiet they may seem, echo through eternity with the power to heal and transform the world. Rest well, dream peacefully, and know that somewhere in the realm of stars and dreams, Ragnar's ship still sails, carrying all gentle souls safely home to their eternal rest.